Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is gonna kind of be the start of what I hope to be a several video long Trans 101 and transgender information type series. Uh, in my past videos, I've already addressed how I identify some trans-related terminology and a couple offensive things because these are questions that I've been asked pretty frequently. Today's video is going to kind of cover the gatekeeping or am I trans enough type questions and my personal journey of how I knew that I was transgender. So, am I trans enough? The simple answer is yes. Absolutely 100% yes. If you do not identify with the gender you were assigned at birth, automatically, no holds barred, you are trans enough. Now that can be anything from where you only sometimes don't identify with the gender you were assigned at birth, or whether you're like completely, absolutely, that is not me. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you're out, doesn't matter if you plan on starting hormones, whether you want surgery, whether none of those things are accessible or safe for you. It does not matter. If you do not identify with the gender you were assigned at birth, you are trans enough. For loads of people, transition just simply isn't an option. Some people it's not safe to come out, for some people it's not financially feasible, some people medically just can't do hormones or surgeries or anything like that. Some people are too young and don't have supportive parents. Some people it would end up causing major issues like homelessness, or it would pose significant safety problems. So anybody's decision to come out or to transition or anything like that is a super personal choice, and whether or not you can or do complete these things does not lessen the validity of your transness. So, me personally, how I knew is kind of a long story. I have kind of always known that there was something different about me. As a kid, I was very much what you would consider typical tomboy. So I would play with Matchbox cars, and I was always on my bike in the pool, playing in the dirt. Anything I could do to just be very active and not super girly. And that's not to say that I didn't do girly things as well, because at my mom's house, which was where I spent most of my time, I was one of 3 female children, so we had Barbie dolls and American Girl dolls, and we wore pretty dressy dresses for Christmas and Thanksgiving and all those sorts of things. So I absolutely did participate in a lot of very feminine activities, especially as a young child, but it was not my preference at all. When I would spend time, especially at my dad's house, my parents were divorced, and I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time there, but especially when I was there, I was much more masculine. I would ride motocross there, I would play in the dirt, I would be in the creek, and all sorts of basically doing anything I could to hang out with my older brother. And my dad encouraged some of it to a point. He was very much hyper-masculine, and once I started getting a little older, got towards puberty, then he would start putting on major gender roles, which bothered me tremendously. Once I started getting into the tween, teen type stuff, when puberty hit, I was miserable. Absolutely miserable. I wanted to absolutely throw up every time I got in the shower. I literally wanted to die when I got my period. And that can be a thing for a lot of trans guys. This extreme discomfort with our secondary sex characteristics is super typical. And that's what is called dysphoria. So this really uncomfortable, almost painful dissonance with our bodies and our brains is one of the major challenges that trans people run into, because it's so incredibly uncomfortable, and it can be so intense that a lot of trans people actually consider suicide. And that was the case for me as a teenager. this dysphoria that I didn't have any words for. I really had never heard of trans people, like I didn't know what dysphoria was, but this horrendous depression got really, really bad as a teenager, and I mean, it wasn't all trans stuff, there were other factors involved, but that was a really big part of it, and it actually ended up being a serious mental health concern for me as a teenager. But again, I didn't know anything about the LGBTQ community as a kid, or really at all until high school. High school is when I was introduced to what being gay or bi actually was, and I actually met people who had these identities in my high school and began to learn all the vocabulary and actually got to know people as human beings instead of just a concept. And I've actually come out several times in my life, and the first time was as bisexual in like my freshman year of high school, which went horribly. But by the time I was in about my junior year of high school, I had finally heard the term transgender and learned about what it meant, and something just clicked. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's why I felt so off for so long my whole life. This totally makes sense. But I didn't have a solid sense of self yet, so I experimented with maybe I'm non-binary. Particularly, I thought I might be gender fluid, because I was still very attached to like the idea of physical parenthood, so I wanted to give birth to a child. And so that kind of connected me to the womanhood that I thought that was implicit in wanting to bear a child at the time. So by senior year, I had come out to my girlfriend at the time. I had asked a few very specific friends to try calling me by a different name, different pronouns. But before I graduated, still hardly anybody knew. When I went to college was kind of when I changed my whole life. I went to college about 9 hours away from where I grew up on purpose, specifically to get away from everything that I had gone to school with. My family that I knew was very, very much not accepting of this, and all of the drama that was there. So I went to college, started my life over as Quinn, trans man. I was very out and open to anybody, and just kind of started my life over. Not everybody can do that, so I was very, very blessed in the fact that the school that I went to was decently accepting. A lot of the staff was fantastic. My residential life coordinator ended up being the staff for our college Gender and Sexuality Alliance, which was a really good lucky break for me. And I was actually the first out trans person on that college campus, and by the time I left town 5 years later, there were at least 10 other trans people that came out on that campus, which I found was incredibly uplifting. I was purposefully out and open as this kind of public figure, because I didn't want any other kids or teens or young adults to have to go through the same crap that I went through. I didn't know anybody who was transgender. I didn't have any people to ask questions to, and I don't want people to have to go through that alone. So that's one of the biggest reasons that I do these videos, and I'm so out on Facebook and Instagram and all the social media that I have. I'm very open and honest about virtually everything about my transition. The only thing I don't share is my dead name, which is the name that I was assigned at birth, because it's so attached to a lot of trauma and just the worst parts of my transition and the worst reactions that I got from both my parents specifically, but others as well, where it just is not something that I'm comfortable sharing. But that being said, I am an open book. I am here for you. Ask me questions, send me messages on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, whatever. Because, again, to wrap up, the answer is yes, you are trans enough, and people in this community really understand the horrible feeling of being left out, so we try not to gatekeep as much as possible. Whether you're binary, non-binary, whether you want to transition, whether you can transition, whether it's not financially or medically feasible, whether you just want information, reach out. We're here to support you, and welcome to the community. I hope this video has been enlightening for either those trans people who are questioning their gender, or just kind of coming into the community, or even for cis people who are just looking for information. I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to talking to you guys in the next video. Alright, you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.